Hey everybody, welcome back to the Golden Bolt. This week we are tackling the second game in our Too Many Games marathon thingy, and that is Civil War: A Nation Divided on the PlayStation 2. I don't have a joke for this one. The game itself is the joke here. Thanks, Jake. Well, to discuss the roots of the Civil War, we have to go way back. See, even before the American colonies were founded, slavery was prevalent in Europe. It was in 1619 that Dutch colonists introduced the 18th century. Eli Whitney had patented and released his cotton gin, which absolutely revolutionized the American cotton industry. As a result, though, as America continued to expand westward, both sides clashed over the issue of slavery in these new territories. The South continued to focus on expanding America's power at all costs. Southern states quickly left the Union upon Lincoln's victory in the 1860 election. Lincoln and the Confederates were clinging to the hope that some countries in Europe would intervene due to their reliance on the South's cotton exports, but none ever did. The game is split up into two campaigns, one for the United Army and one for the Confederate Army. You control 10 different, essentially nameless grunts in 10 of the most important battles of the Civil War, as narrated by the History Channel. I say essentially nameless because the only time you ever get any backstory about your characters is during the loading screens in the form of these 2-page journal entries. Nothing of note is ever said during these, although they're nice little pieces of filler. Nothing of note, by the way, is the most accurate way to describe anything that happens in this game. I don't mean that as an insult to the Civil War's importance, of course. I mean that literally nothing happens in this game. In any given mission, you're introduced to the battle by an expository History Channel bit, which I think was actually taken from the History Channel, and then you're thrown into the most inconsequential battles you'll ever see in a first-person shooter.
23,000 casualties occur.
There's never any set pieces, never anything enthralling plot-wise to make you want to fight, just empty fields. Don't get me wrong, I get the lack of set pieces considering it's an older era, but these wars had massive casualties. The toll extends beyond the battlefield. In the missions, you're a one-man wrecking crew that single-handedly turns the tide of each battle, but then right afterwards the narrator tells you that your side still got routed. What's the point of showing us the battle in a winnable way then? At one point during the Confederate campaign, the narrator says that the Confederates are bottlenecked and slaughtered. Show us that! Show us something about our allies dying! Something like the nuke scene in Call of Duty 4 or No Russian in Modern Warfare 2, but in reverse. That'd be so much more effective than just having us complete some arbitrary objective and then slapping us in the face by telling us our whole fight was in vain. Old school Call of Duty did superbly at weaving a narrative into the history. You had a group of soldiers that banded together, and if one died, you felt that. Here it's just nameless grunts all dying for meaningless outcomes that you don't even see. Your actions never feel like they turn the tide of a battle, even when your commanding officer says they do. You're told by the History Channel what happens, and mock history all you want for its recent shift away from, well, history, but back when this game was made, they knew how to weave a story into the textbook. Instead of actual plot, the game likes to use references to big Civil War era buzzword names all the time just to make things feel more important. So you'll hear Lincoln, Grant, Lee, Stonewall Jackson, and many other names that you probably learned about in high school, but you never see any of these people. You're just told that they're around, and that's supposed to make up for this. All of this nothing. At times, the game attempts to hide its nothing by trying to act like it's a cinematic adventure like Call of Duty. Not that it tries hard at all, though. I mean, take the opening, for example.
We hold that bridge, soldiers, or we won't be going home for Christmas. We'll be planted here till Judgment Day.
When can we get this started?
Everyone back home is counting on us. Now move! The Rebs have their reinforcements! We got no... HQ. Follow me or die where you stand!
Don't forget me.
You can still fight! Move!
I didn't alter that. I wish I was funny enough to have made that, but that wasn't me. Like I said a moment ago, it doesn't come even close to the narrative impact that most historical shooters at least attempt to have. I mean, who needs an interesting, diverse cast of characters when you've got old guy, and old guy? Yeah, I can't do this. The story of Civil War is non-existent. It's just 10 disjointed missions presented in a disjointed way with no real overarching story. There's so much that could have been done here, but instead we're left with an incoherent mess of a plot. There's just no way I can give this game any sort of Bolt rating for its story. That'd be an insult to the system I've set up so far, and all the games I've reviewed up to now. Civil War is a first-person shooter where you complete different objectives to advance the story while fighting enemies constantly. Well, maybe not fighting so much as running past them and slapping them if they get in your way. There's no incentive for you to actually kill your opponents in most levels. Even on hard, you can just run past everything and save yourself several minutes of terribly, terribly awkward shooting. See, the guns are accurate to the Civil War era, so a lot of them are very slow between shots. That tends to make the shooting extremely sluggish, albeit a kind of sluggish that I can appreciate historically. Yeah, the mechanics aren't necessarily fun with this, but I can get behind a game trying to be different to empathize with its time period. What I can't get behind, though, is the checkpoint system. There are no actual checkpoints. The game doesn't tell you this, so you won't find out until you die at the very end of a level, just to get brought back to the very start. Instead of, programming, I guess that took too much effort, the game allows you to save whenever you wish. That way when you die, you can reload your own custom-made checkpoints for better or worse. This means that you could overwrite your old save by accident and end up with a checkpoint where you have almost no health and very little of the game's very stingy ammo supply, and that means you're probably screwed. But hey, checkpoints were too hard, let's give them some slack. Yeah, you heard me right, the game has a health bar. Or rather, I guess, health stars. These 4 stars down here determine how much health you have left, although you can find health packs infrequently to give you a boost. Above that on the HUD is the ammo meter, and to the right of that is your grenade count. Yeah, the Civil War had grenades, I was surprised too. Above that is, I guess you could call it a compass? It shows exactly where the next objective is, and nothing else. It doesn't show terrain, so you may know where the objective is, but not how to reach it. It doesn't show enemy placements, and hell, it doesn't even show directions. I'm not going to take too much time to explain the controls, but I will note that they don't really work. The R3 button, yeah, the one on the stick, reloads. Sometimes, whenever it wants to, really. And I didn't know you could actually change weapons until about halfway into my playthrough. Not because I didn't try the button, but because it didn't work, so that's good. I guess it's fitting that the controls don't work, because the mechanics just don't work either, really. The hitboxes are so bad that you can shoot a foot past somebody and still hit them sometimes. So when in doubt, if your reticle is red, just go ahead and shoot, you're probably guaranteed a hit. There's only one hitbox, though. Headshots do nothing special, so just go ahead and keep aiming for the chest. And like I mentioned a bit earlier, there's a grand total of 2 set pieces, this bridge explosion sequence and the chain gun segment. I'm going to focus on the chain gun segment for now. This was the developer's way of adding spice to keep players on the edge of their seats. You can already see some problems with that, since this is actually less thrilling than a Civil War reenactment. The biggest problem with this segment, though, is that your ally does not do anything close to calling out enemy locations. It is entirely on you to find out where you're getting shot from. The sign of a good FPS is competent allies in the single player. They kill enemies, or at least pretend to. They call out enemy locations or nearby grenades. They do something. In this game, they can all die just as easily as all the enemies, and more often than not, they actually die more easily. It feels like some sort of terrible in-joke between the developers.
I'll give you cover, buddy. You gotta move through them trees and meet up with the commander. Don't worry none about me. Come closer. There's a weak spot. Enemy lines. Take the news to the commander north of here. Tell him to attack and breach their lines. Don't forget me.
On top of the couple lazy set pieces, the level design attempts to be as varied as your Call of Duties or Battlefields. There's a stealth mission where you can't sneak because there's actually not any stealth mechanics. There are missions where you need to destroy blockades to help your allies breach the line. And most importantly, there's Gettysburg, the sniper mission. They took the most iconic, important battle of the war and turned it into a snooze fest. Did this actually happen? Yeah, there were actually snipers during Gettysburg. Should that have been the mission we played? No, absolutely not. This should have been a marathon epic with twists and turns, with allies dying left and right, all to the tune of somber Civil War era music. Instead we got 5 minutes of sniping and then... Donkey Kong? What? Okay, I can't do this. If the developer won't make Gettysburg interesting, then it's up to me.
7.
Tactical nuke incoming!
As far as the gameplay goes, it technically functions, but it's also technically absolute garbage. I didn't even mention the fact that this game has no multiplayer. This game came out in 2006. I know it wouldn't have been good multiplayer, I mean, look at this game, but they didn't even try. There's nothing to be redeemed out of the gameplay here either, so this isn't getting a bolt either. Let's start off with the music. Let's start off with the visuals. There are approximately 4 character models in this whole game, so expect to see old guy a lot. This game actually doesn't look too terrible for a PS2 game though, so I can't bash it too much on this. The levels do often blend together visually though, so you're going to enter a lot of forests, you're going to see a couple empty fields, and so on. Nothing is ever particularly distinct, and if you ask me to describe any mission besides the first one I played, I couldn't do it. The sound effects are alright, they're nothing special, they just sound like guns. The voice acting though is absolutely horrendous, but in the best of ways. I cannot think of any lines that weren't delivered so poorly that I outright laughed, which I guess could be seen as a good thing. Hell, I'll be honest, the terrible dichotomy between the History Channel narrations and the actual events of the game was enough to make me laugh sometimes too, so yeah. But these aren't good things, I'm not praising the game for them, I'm laughing at the game because of how terrible they are. Before I wrap this up, I want to mention one thing about the music. There is exactly one song in this game, but it only plays on the main menu and the credits. That song is the main theme of the 1989 Civil War film, Glory. So now we know where the budget went at least. Wait, these names... This game, about America's war with itself, was made by an Eastern European company. Yep, that explains a lot. So yet again, because the game has pretty much nothing to redeem with its presentation, I'm stuck between giving it a no bolt or a Dean Fingerholes. That name is fantastic. You know what? That helped me make up my mind. I'm gonna give it a bronze bolt just for Dean Fingerholes. Do you like the Civil War but want to not like the Civil War anymore? Play this game. Its apathetic execution of some of the most important battles in our country's history is sickening at times. Even though I'm somewhat of a history buff, I was never a huge Civil War guy, but I don't even want to think about the Civil War after playing this. If you're a fan of all things FPS and you're always looking for another shooter to play, I guess you could give this game a shot. I would strongly recommend you spend that $5 on something else though, like food or entertainment. But hey, it's your money. You'll at least get a laugh out of the terrible dialogue. Literally any classic Call of Duty or Battlefield game will appeal more to your inner history fan than this history game ever could though. Alright guys, I've had enough of the Civil War for now, so with that said, we're going to take a quick break from the Too Many Games marathon thingy to review a game that I really had the urge to play lately. So join me next week when we tackle Ratchet & Clank Going Commando.